Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest to introduce to you now. Louise Gibson has been both teacher and learner for the past 40 years. Her experiences have taken her from the Midwest to the Southwest, the United States, across the pond to teach in Germany, and once her classroom was an open field in Ecuador. For 13 years, she actively taught and supported the home education community as she herself became teacher to her own children. In 2010, though, life took a hard turn. Life and work changed dramatically when a serious health challenge became evident in her daughter. And, unbeknownst to Louise, there was a mounting health issue within her own body that would parallel her daughter's demanding journey. This is a story that Louise shares in her upcoming book, The 12th Mile, When Hard Becomes Harder Still. It's an unbelievable, inspiring, and hilarious story, as the world of sport has never been her friend. Nevertheless, running became the diligent teacher who revealed the power of thoughts, the beauty and resilience, and the hard work of perseverance. Louise is the wife of her loving husband, Jeff, who are married for 37 years, a mom to 3 adult children, and delights in being a grandma to a baby boy named Silas Jack. Louise Gibson, what an absolute honor it is to welcome you to Boundless Body Radio.
Thank you, Casey. Good to be here.
It is such an honor to host you. This is the second time within 24 hours that we've gotten to chat with each other. You and I did a bit of a discovery call so we could kind of get to know each other a lot better. And you were highly recommended on a podcast that at the date of this recording, we just dropped with Denise Potter,
That's
who
right.
both of us are so fortunate to know her personally, to be able to chat with her. What an amazing person she is. Just an absolute heart of gold. What has been your experience working with her?
Oh my gosh. She has been my co-traveler for 2 years, from January 2022 to January 2024, and even gave me her personal contact information for any medical concerns I had. She walked diligently through nutritional intervention therapy regarding my focal epilepsy, and I killed the thing. I don't have epilepsy anymore.
It's absolutely amazing. I cannot wait to deep dive into your own personal story, and we'll go all the way back to the beginning. But before we do, I'm going to skip ahead just a little bit and
Okay.
ask you about the title of your book. What is it about the 12th mile that is so hard?
Oh, yes. Well, 2010, my daughter became ill, and it was a severe illness that did not get any better. And even today, she deals with it. She's in graduate school for public health and wants to take her story to impact, because she has a huge message, right? And so our story together, the 12th mile, when hard becomes harder still, mimicked my experience as a runner. And I don't think I'm alone in saying that we all have had the experience, or many have had the experience, of being the last one picked. Last one picked in the whole gym class, physical education class scenario. And I was that person. I never thought that, I mean, academia was my thing, never sport. Well, one morning, God kind of changed all that, and I became a runner at age 47 and found out I loved it. And my first endurance race, actually, it's the largest 25K road race in the United States, is here in Grand Rapids, and it's known as the Amway Riverbank Run. And it is 25K, 15 and a half miles. And I have a pace goal. I have a bucket list pace goal that I am able to adequately hold after all of the hard mileage until mile 12. And it was a huge parallel, because once I got to the 12th mile, I found out years later that the course is completely flat. I had already done the hard work, but it has just a huge life application, that we go through hard seasons in life. We don't even know that we've been through the hardest part. And all of a sudden, we feel like there is no light at the end of the tunnel. And so that race was, what do you do when life becomes harder still? I mean, the race is hard, right? You do all the miles and all of that, and I'm running my pace. I'm keeping it. I'm going to get the gold. And then at mile 12, the harder still it becomes. If you know anything about running, people listening know anything about running, there comes a point in a race where it gets really hard, hitting the wall, right? And so it became kind of a paradigm, an analogy, a model for what it's like to deal with chronic illness in a home that's
Mm.
relentless.
Wow. Wow, I love that. I love the title, and I think yeah, all of us can relate to that. Mine would be a little bit different. Mine might be like the second mile because I'd never run, and I might encounter my problems a lot sooner than you certainly did. But that's amazing. I can't wait to deep dive into all of that. But yeah, before we do, let's go back in chronological order and tell us about your upbringing and tell us about what it was like being the last kid picked in different sports or different activities like you were, and yeah, what kind of health issues you dealt with.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was raised in a very traditional, authoritarian type home. My upbringing was not supportive of physical activity. It wasn't even a value. And I would say that that kind of skewed my whole balance of what is the value of movement? What's the value of sport? I was taught that it didn't have much, that people that knew how to use their minds did exactly that and did the 3 R's: reading, writing, arithmetic, blah, blah, blah. Well, fast forward, I become a high school math teacher and I realized that, oh my word, when you get kids to move, they're more successful in the classroom. And it was revolutionary, where I wasn't even really supported in even pursuing anything like baseball or running or track and field. I mean, that was just not the context of my upbringing. And here as a teacher, I saw kids who literally did better in algebra because they could work it all out in all the stuff inside their spirit, their heart, whatever, by going to that track and field competition and being able to support your students, that I care about you. So I'm going to be there because I want you to know that I think you matter. And that all translates into academic success. And I began to learn that as a teacher, not younger in life. So huge change. And then obviously myself, I got skin in the game when I ended up becoming a runner. So
Yeah,
I still
wow.
laugh at that.
It's amazing. Like if you'd go back in my, personal training career, 17, 18 years, and ask me what I thought about exercise and movement and how it related to the body, I would have told you 100% the benefit is physical and there's no real other benefit. And now I would argue, pretty easily argue that most of the benefit is mental and emotional for that movement piece. And I'll always go
Absolutely.
back. It's one of my favorite books, called Go Wild. And it makes the point that we have developed, even when this book was written, this is like written in like 2013, published 2013 or something.
Hmm.
It made the point that even at that time, we didn't really have AI, but we'd still developed computers that were beating us in chess pretty regularly, our chess
Hmm.
champions, but we will never be able to create a robot or a machine that can move with the grace that we can. And the point is, we think your brain is for facts when really it's about coordinating movement patterns and even just simple movements that we don't even really think about, like walking upstairs or opening a door and walking through, are so complex and require so many systems to be working
For sure.
properly. Like the movement piece, as we're learning with mental health, we're learning with things like Parkinson's disease and Alzheimer's. It is that physical movement that is so critical to our mental health as well.
Yeah, John Rady wrote a book called Spark. And he just, well, he kind of tells the truth on physical education teachers. He said, you guys, not there's only one quarterback, right? So how can we get kids understanding that their movement, even the best students, they come to gym class and feel like they're failures. So he talks about in his book where he gives like the science nerdy geeks and the math students, a clipboard and a running watch. And they end up saying, oh my gosh, I feel better about all things because I could move my body. Spark was a game changer for me. It literally led me to go back to my gym and apologize to my friends who were recently retired gym teachers about I didn't know. I just didn't know. And they've been so sweet to give me their perspective. They
Yeah,
forgave me.
no,
They forgave me too.
that's good. That's nice of them. I'm so glad you brought up Spark because John Rady was the co-author of the book that I mentioned, Go Wild. It came just a little bit after, so it comes from the same person doing the same research. So yeah, Spark was an amazing book, and I'm glad it transformed your life as much as it did. So where do we jump in now as far as like your teaching career with learning about physical education, but also like the health issues? What's the exact timeline here?
Okay, so I was a teacher on the border in El Paso, Texas. Awesome experience, and actually was an army wife. So that sent me into Germany for 3 years, and I got on the other end of teaching and got into early childhood and understood how formative things that we do with kids who crawl on the floor set them up to be okay. Is math going to be my friend? Which was a whole nother thing we could talk about. So I spent 3 years in Europe, and then we came back to El Paso once again. Years passed, and we found ourselves, civilians, and in the Michigan area. In about 2000, year 2000, I was sitting in church, and all of a sudden, kind of stared off into space. It lasted 15 seconds. Didn't think a thing about, and it felt relaxed. I mean, I felt so relaxed, and I just kind of blew it off. And that was about the year 2000. About 18 months later, it happened again, and again I blew it off. And my thought was, Jeff, is my husband, is so much more laid back than I am. I'm sure you can probably already tell that I'm pretty tightly wound and super structured and all that. I'm like, my word, if Jeff is right, I really do need to relax. Maybe this is just a nice time for me to relax. So I told nobody until it got to be like 8 years later. I collapsed on the kitchen floor. My poor husband, he knew nothing. And I just sat up after 3 minutes and I said, I'm all good. Let's go to church. And we went, and then I collapsed in my Sunday school class. And our good friend, who is a physician, said, you need to get yourself to the ER. I was diagnosed with vasovagal syncope. Athletes struggle with this at times when they get depleted of sodium. And I kind of went with that. I mean, I was a consult to other home educated students. I was teaching my own kids. My plate's too full. I never really took care of my health until it got to be 2020, no less. And the thing is that my whatever they were called, we were calling them episodes. They were so cyclic. I mean, sometimes 6 months to the day, I would have to get down on my left side. I'd stare off into space. Wasn't sure if I was, unconscious or not. And after 2 or 3 minutes, I'd sit up and say, okay, what's the next thing? Except that in 2020, I got much sicker. And that led me to a neurologist, and the neurologist diagnosed me with epilepsy. All the while, my daughter is sick with some kind of mental thing that isn't getting any better. And that started in 2010. So my illness, whatever it was, we didn't know. And I didn't even care to find out because I was too busy, started in 2000. And my daughter kind of really was lost her hold on life in 2010, and they all kind of came together in 2020, 2022. So and I was officially diagnosed with epilepsy in October of 2021. And tough call. I mean, it was a tough piece of news. And right away, the course of action presented was, which anesthesia med do you want? Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. And uh, epilepsy, and as you know, because we talked about brain energy, and Dr. Chris Palmer's book was something that came into my life right soon after working with Denise. And in Palmer's book, he argues that mental health is simply a metabolic disorder. Well, not simply, but it is a metabolic disorder of the brain. And he compares mental health issues alongside of neurological issues like epilepsy. And I've seen what mental health drugs look like, and that surely wasn't going to be my door number one in dealing with my epilepsy, because it was so episodic. It was so months would go by, I would be asymptomatic. And you don't even know when you take that type of medication, whether it's for mental health or whether it's for neurological health, whether that is even a drug that is working until it doesn't. And I didn't want to be a petri dish. That was my choice. I wasn't dealing with this every day. And the more I discovered, the more I researched, the more I learned, I thought, my gosh, keto's been around forever, since Archimedes and 760 BC. It was known that when you have people stop eating, their seizures stopped. And then I learned more about Palmer and, the keto diet, how it mimics that fasting state. And Denise came into my life and I decided nutrition and a metabolic intervention.
Wow. So how did you even find that to begin with? Like you said, like this idea has been around for literally thousands of years. You do hear those stories of people having seizures, in ancient civilizations, and they would take the person and put them in a cave for 2 or 3 days, and they would be fasted, and they'd come out and they'd be just fine. But since medications have been more popular, the idea that you can do this with nutrition is kind of harder to find. So I mean, how were you able to find out about the ketogenic diet? What was different about you than most people who get presented the course of action and just you have no other choice? Of course, you're going to take the medications.
Okay, well, great question because you'd think I would have just, well, was also a caregiver of someone who was chronically ill, right? And my epilepsy came to a head right at the point of when I had to make a decision. But backing up just 2 years before that, 2021, I had a running coach, and I was working closely with a sports chiropractor, Dr. Jason Ross, and he said, Louise, why don't you consider, just throwing the question out to your neurologist? What do you think about, ask them what they think about using a keto diet as the intervention? Particularly because mine behaved, I didn't have seizures every day. And could that be a door number one? Could that be a first step? And so it was really, to answer your question, it was because of the more functional, hands-on, more natural approach that I would say that my sports chiropractor has always had with me, even in dealing with my running issues, hip issues, back issues, it's always been more natural. And so when I told him, because he knew I was struggling, I didn't know what I was struggling with. When I told him the diagnosis came in for epilepsy, he said, ask them about keto. And then that just launched me. I mean, that just fed my brain cells and it just launched me into a deep dive and research into what in the world is this thing.
Yeah, well, it's hard to unsee it once you do see it. But like I said, it's kind of harder to find. The medical community, by and large, doesn't really know about it. So very fortunate that the chiropractor knew about it. Did you ever find out where he found out about keto?
He's in that world. I mean, he believes in all things natural,
Yeah.
and a professional peer of his, Dr. Mike T. Nelson, Extreme Human Performance. He is all about metabolic health. Actually, I ended up in my keto journey, and I can talk about that in a few minutes as I'm kind of jumping ahead of the gun because of my needing to learn about what in the world are we talking about metabolic flexibility. I had never heard those two words. And they're huge for everybody, for our health, being able to process the right fuel at the right time. I'm pretty passionate about that too. I'll stop there because it was a great course.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And we are kind of skipping ahead a little bit. I do want to talk about your daughter's health. Do we
Mhm.
want to talk? Do we want to proceed by talking about like your journey with keto therapies, or should this be a good time for us to skip backwards and talk a little bit about your daughter and her own chronic health issues?
Sure. Let's go back to my daughter's chronic health issues because in 2010, she's a voracious reader. And again, our education paradigm was like just focused at home. We had other support groups, unit studies, they were playing in the use, my son and daughter were playing in the youth symphony. They had other things they did, but the context of our educational study was still focused at home, even in the beginning high school years. And one day she realized, almost started hyperventilating, Mom, I can't do it. I can't memorize my book anymore. I didn't realize the pressure mentally she was under to perform. And she got to that point, that tipping point, the kitchen island moment, I call it, where she realized, I cannot relax with my life. Life feels more than me, and I'm done. I cannot do it. And so there were all of these symptoms, and we were playing emotional whack-a-mole. I mean, you can talk about garden variety anxiety, depression, just hyperactivity, not being able to relax. We tried one medication, another medication, another medication. Now that was 2010. Today is what, 2025? In 15 years, she's been on over 28 different medications.
Wow.
And she is on minimal medication right now because she has a great medical team that get her. She's been in so many ERs, so many different kinds of robust care experiences, that they realize she's refractory, she's treatment resistant. So, what does happen is that when she runs, she has an older friend, Victor. He's 84, and he is a story. I actually talk about him in my book, but he got her running. And every time she runs, every time anyone I know in my life who's bipolar, why is there this common denominator? They cannot have gluten. I think we need to be looking at that more. And I think we are in the metabolic community. But my argument as a mama would be we're all on the same team. We want people to get better. So, what does better look like? Yeah, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. She is on a couple of medications, but very minimal. And let's bring that metabolic perspective along with the traditional medical perspective and see how they can be friends and play together. Because finally, a nurse said, Brittany, we now know medication is not your first intervention. I'm like, I could have told them that 7 years ago. I mean, my argument, even as in my writing, is I'm not saying that medication never, ever, ever, ever has a place, but I think we need to look. And Dr. Palmer talks about this too with a bipolar patient. You need to look at a patient as a beautiful, unique individual and what will work for this patient. And he chronicles this case study in his book. What works for that one patient? Awesome. That doesn't mean you can do Control C, Control V, and it's going to work the same way for somebody else. And my goal of my book, Casey, is to help one parent. If I bring some metabolic ideas or different thoughts into the table discussion, and that one parent out there who has a sick kid, an adolescent, like, you know what, this medication is just making my kids sicker, not better. And what this family went through, I'm taking this book, I'm going to put it on the doctor's desk and say, let's bring some other things to the table of discussion. All of the things. Let's lay out all the cards, get to know my kid, and let's decide what is the best course for true health. And I speak that with some passion because 15 years of having a sick kid does something to a parent. And we need to be addressing more than just traditional drug therapies. That needs to welcome the new perspective that I think Dr. Chris Palmer, Metabolic Mind, those are things, Dr. Rady, they can come to the table and say, this is how we help people achieve true health. We don't want to just keep maintaining the status quo and increase change. That gets to be a pattern. Increase change with medication. Increase change. And you waste a person's life that way. Um, and yeah, that's my, that's, oh,
I
sorry.
really, I wish you could have brought some of that passion and enthusiasm to this conversation today. Really, really lacking quite a bit of passion when you speak about this. I can't imagine. Like, it's one thing to go through your own health issues, but when it's your own child, it must be so hard. In all the 15 years that you were working with, I can't believe there's that many medications, by the way, that she was on at different times. Were there any like positive steps forward or any periods where things were looking a little bit better? Or was it pretty much, like you said, just a game of whack-a-mole? Like, if something was better,
Whack-a-mole.
it was extremely temporary. You didn't know what was making things better, what was making things worse, just total arbitrary.
Total arbitrary until in 2016, God decided to bring a man named Victor into Brittany's life. And I do write about him because he was so pivotal. And we, at that time, we were pretty much discouraged. Brittany had just gotten out of the hospital again. They had given her new medications again, and she wasn't getting better again. She goes back to her part-time job at a local grocery store, and this older gentleman, he was 77 at the time, decided I think she could use a friend. And he was a friend to her in the most genuine sense of the word. He comes up to Brittany and says, Brittany, oh, he didn't, he introduced himself and they introduced each other and do the normal things that you do when you meet someone for the first time. But he said, which way do the rivers in Siberia flow? And Brittany comes home and she said, wasn't that an odd question, Mom? And all of a sudden she wanted to communicate with me because, since her recent discharge, our relationship was very stilted. And once Victor started coming into her life, he decided, I found out later, he thought she could use a friend. Actually, he had thought in obsessing her, looking at assessing her, I think she might be on too many medications, whatever is going on in her life. But I didn't know that until, oh my gosh, maybe 7 years later that that's what he thought because I didn't even know him, right? So in the months following, he would just come into the grocery store. And I don't even think Brittany had a therapist at that time. We were just in a really bad spot. And sometimes that would happen. And Victor just kept coming in. Oh, by the way, the rivers in Siberia all flow north because of the topography of the land. So they had a lot of fun with that. Found out Victor was Polish and he would go through the self checkout and he would push that language option, Polish, just so he could hear his native language being spoken as he was purchasing his groceries. He was spent some formative years in a slave labor camp during World War II. So he
Wow.
no suffering. He remembers eating boiled grass because that was all there was to eat. And I have to say that he was a genuine friend to my daughter. And he was a runner. He found out at age 57 that he could run. Obviously, he made his way from Siberia, Iran, India, all the places. They stayed in England and then ended up coming over to the United States and made the United States their home. He found out, though, as an older middle-aged adult, I can run. He qualified for Boston at age 66, ran Boston at age 67, and he still runs everywhere. But to answer your question, because your question was, where do we ever have like hopeful moments? He would be the guy that would come and say, Brittany, we need to run about 5 miles today. Or he would say, try this UV light. I'd like you to sit in front of it. Would you do that for me? Those kinds of things. Backing up again, I'm going back and forward, but because I said that was later. But when I was first beginning to know Victor, I never knew what he did. I mean, I just knew him. He was this older man who kept speaking so caringly in such an appropriate, healthy way, just engaging her in conversation. And I said, finally, because Victor challenged her about being gentle with herself. And the stories were so good. And I looked at Brittany, I said, what in the world does this Victor do for a living? Or had he done before he retired? And she goes, Mom, he was a therapist. And it was just so beautiful because I was so worried that my daughter was not receiving any care. And she was receiving one-on-one care this whole time through this gentle soul who decided that my daughter needed a friend. And Victor, although a trained therapist, social worker person, professionally himself, has been the road of mental health professionally and even had kids that struggled. But he spoke into my daughter's life about the value of movement. And when she did what Victor encouraged, she got better. And so again, it wasn't medication. And so he was the key person that got her to really think critically about maybe I need to be moving my body regularly. She felt better.
Wow. Wow. And he had no other motives to speak with her, to work with her at all. It wasn't like he was looking for a client for therapy or anything. He just saw a
No.
need and stepped in.
He saw a need and he stepped in. He told me later, he said, I wasn't sure if I could reach her, but I wanted to try. He
Wow.
said she looked kind of catatonic, which was true. She was on way too many meds. And he just got her running and thinking about making better choices metabolically. And all this, because of that, she got better. Victor has been a precious, precious friend to my daughter.
Wow. That's incredible. Thank you for sharing that. We'll come back to the running in a little bit. I want to hear how, not only your daughter started, but how you started as well. But let's deep dive into the journey into the metabolic health. You were fortunate enough to get the good advice from the chiropractor. You start looking into and finding people like Dr. Chris Palmer, just an incredible person. I'm so fortunate to be able to have met him as well. His book, hearing him read his own book is like one of the most, passionate kind of audiobooks you can hear. You really can tell in his voice how passionate he is about this topic as well. But what was it like for you to be learning about this? You said, as we all know in this space, like once you start to learn, it's pretty addictive and you just want to keep going and keep going.
Mhm.
What were some of the difficulties in understanding that, yes, you're super motivated, you want to fix, possibly your own mental health and maybe improve your daughter's as well. But what were some of the practical things that were difficult as you were learning about the diet and trying to get that started?
Blueberries. Blueberries. As a runner, I was committed. I still am in it because I'm off keto now, so oatmeal is a good thing for me. But I had a flax meal porridge that Denise helped me create, but having to weigh good things and having the self-discipline not to eat good things was the most difficult. And I told you I was a math teacher, so I literally at the very beginning I was overwhelmed by the evidence of carbohydrate in nearly everything. We think of carbohydrate, we immediately think bread, rolls, pasta. But there are non-starchy carbs. I mean, tomatoes, spaghetti sauce was a danger zone, and I love spaghetti sauce, but I love blueberries. And so I weighed my blueberries in my flax meal porridge, and I could have three that morning. They were big blueberries, and I wept. I'm sorry, Casey. The stress had gotten over the top, and then I'm thinking, wait a minute, you're a math teacher. You can do this. I know division. So since they were big blueberries, I divided three, three became six, six became 12, 12 became 24, and I arranged them all. I was like, you know what? I got this. We're going to move forward. It is totally worth it. So three blueberries that morning became 24, and it is it was a pivotal moment for me because from that point on, even with my protein, um, that when I got discouraged, there were ways like James and the Giant Peach, that movie that says, try looking at it a different way. And I
Mm.
think that when you're trying to get used to keto, because I knew that I very well could get rid of epilepsy completely. And in the big grand scheme of things, good grief, 2 years, I can do this for 2 years. So I had to figure out my first challenge was blueberries. And once I made three blueberries 12, actually the rest of the 2 years, I mean, I use that principle forward, moving forward.
Yeah, I love that. That's such a huge thing when you're talking about this way. I think it's easy for people to feel like, um, you know, they feel bad about themselves, or they feel like, woe is me, I have to do this, all my friends can eat bread and whatever, and framing it a different way, like you said, like, oh, I can get rid of my epilepsy, that's worth it, I can change what I'm eating, and there's ways to get around that. Tell us what it was like to work with Denise in particular. Like, how did you guys find each other? And yeah, how did you interact with her in her program?
Okay, one on one. I mean, she gave me personal attention. I mean, generally we met just once a month via telehealth calls, but I alluded to this, but my epilepsy was very cyclic. And from 2016 through 2022, it would appear on my taper week. My taper week is the week right before my largest road race, my endurance race, and it appeared on my taper week, and I would have quote unquote episodes. And it did that on 2016, 2018, 2020, 22. In January of 2022, it wasn't supposed to come until the spring, and all of the sudden it showed 2 weeks into January of 2022. I had 10 hours of prodromes. Prodromes are like auras. They're the things that are I always enjoyed them because I had about 2 minutes to get myself someplace safe before I collapsed. Well, with the keto, if and this is why I mentioned this because Denise, I was very upset, and her compassion for me was profound. She said, Louise, if you start crying, I'm going to start crying because I had 10 hours of prodromes It's like feeling like you're going to get physically ill, but you can't. The seizure never came, but I felt for 10 hours that it was coming. And then the next day was hangover day. Okay. It was a hangover day, just like we understand a hangover day for like the cause being alcohol, but it wasn't alcohol. It was because of the prodromes. And that pattern, that AB pattern between 10 hours of prodromes, then a hangover day, that on, off, on, off, on, off, on, off lasted for 2 weeks. And I think Denise was sincerely worried about me. So she would call me. She'd say, if there's something, she would text me. How are you doing? She said, I think we need another telehealth call next month. And when my ketones, I heard her podcast this morning, and she was talking about the blood, pricking your blood every night, and that was huge. That accuracy and keeping myself in ketosis in the middle of all of that drama of prodromes and not, because I was just in ketosis, not. I was a little bit over 2, but she wanted me at 5. And you just say there's a scale, right? Over 2, she said that yesterday, is what she'd prefer. I was like more like 3 to 5, right? And I finally felt like something in my body wanted to fight my epilepsy. And I was sick for a while, but when I was sick most in January and February of 2022, I can't even begin to use words to tell you how amazingly attentive Denise was to me. I knew that if I needed her, even in the middle of the night, she wanted to know if I was scared. Because I was actively sick, right? I wasn't having seizures, and yet it was seizure-like activity. And so and I had groups of, okay, so those were the symptoms, and they lasted for like 6 weeks. And then I had a break, and then I had incredible symptoms for another 6 weeks. And then I had a break. And then it morphed into other symptoms. I mean, I don't want to pick them all apart and use our time now, but then 6 months before, okay, that would have been June of 2023, 6 months before January of 2024, when I would have stopped the diet. In June of 2023, all symptoms stopped. All symptoms, any seizure like, any epileptic type symptoms, I felt wonderful. And I cruised on out of the whole last 6 months feeling like a healthy person. And then I had another repeat EEG, and there was no evidence of epilepsy. But I'm saying that because Denise was like, okay, are you sure you wanna continue? And I was like, I'm a runner. I'm not gonna stop my run. And she was my cheerleader, and she ran alongside me even when I was in the 12th mile, when it became harder still. Because my journey wasn't hard. And anyone who's considering keto, I'm telling you, my body, it was like epilepsy was ticked because it did not like it that I was in ketosis. All of a sudden, my body was healing. And after 20 years of being misdiagnosed, because that's what it was, I had something to fight with. And Denise said, what do you, in 2024 in January, she said, what do you think about yourself? Like, I think you're really done with this. I said, what can I say? I'm a kind of a textbook. I'm okay with being that. I was just so grateful, so thankful that she had worked with me so diligently, measured everything out with me, and encouraged me when I had a couple of bad ketosis days, because I wanted everything to be perfect. She said, Louise, you're not going to be perfect. And so she was my cheerleader. And I can't say enough about her, as you can tell. She was faithful to run 2 years with me. She ran the course, and she ran the journey well.
That's amazing. I can't say that I'm surprised knowing Denise as well. She's just such a kind soul. So that's an amazing story. And I'm so glad that you had that support and were able to get through. I do have to ask you as well, like you hear this a lot, that people use ketogenic diets and not your run-of-the-mill keto diet. This is metabolic therapy. This is you're checking ketones. You want to drive them up as high as possible. In a lot of cases, it's like my friend Nicole Laurent says, this is not joking around keto. Like this is serious keto. So you're on it for 2 years, and like you hear stories all the time of people use it, they can go off of it. They can relax a little bit, and the things they were doing, excuse me, the things they were dealing with before don't necessarily come back. But I would think psychologically it would be a little bit difficult to think like this was the diet that fixed me. I no longer have symptoms. I'm getting all these clean tests. Did you have any reservations about leaving a ketogenic diet at some point?
Well, I had Dr. Palmer's book, Brain Energy, to be my guide, as well as Dr. Mike T. Nelson, because you go back to, if I can just briefly reference, you said what was really hard. What was really hard? Yes, the three blueberries, but also what was really hard was the fact that your body is used to accessing, like Denise said yesterday, body wants to burn carbohydrate, right? So when you change fuels and run the backup system, as Dr. Mike would say, you run the backup system of fat, your body cannot find it. It's like that swirly mark you get in the middle of your computer screen, working on it, working on it. It could not find its fuel. And as I took Dr. Mike's course in metabolic, it was a flex diet certification in metabolic flexibility. One of the things, his second chapter was on fat. And I still say his second chapter of that course was my chapter because it was all about fat as fuel. But your body is not used to recognizing that. So what he recommended, if for people who want to lose weight, people who are just on keto, and I hope I'm not diverging too much because this was huge. Getting up in the morning, not taking in any fuel whatsoever, no food, just throwing on some running clothes and going for a fasted walk. That keeps your heart rate low, and you have not ingested any carbs at all, and your body is encouraged to find fat as fuel. When you walk, fasted walks encourage burning fat. So that was a huge player, and that related to your question. And I kind of got off topic. Your question was about
Was it difficult to walk
yeah,
away
yeah.
from a diet that helped you
Okay.
immensely? Like again, psychologically, I would feel like that would be very difficult, and people in our world deal with that all the time.
Right, thank you. So the fasted walks, when I got off of January 2024, and I'm going to be honest, January 2026 is coming up, right? And so I'm thinking, I wonder how my body is going to act because I've cycled on 2-year increments of seizure seasons, and 2024 I really didn't. I mean, I got through 2024 and I was fine. But the one thing that I will credit in that course was the fasted walks. So my body for 2 years was used to being a fat burner. So I really believe in my heart that my body knows better, and running, because I also ran with a heart monitor specifically during those 2 years. I was doing everything to help my body physically to make friends with fat as a fuel. And the other thing that I did was take what Dr. Palmer said in Brain Energy seriously. I think I was on page 246, I think. Doesn't matter. It's a good page for me. He talks about intermittent fasting and what that does for any human body. We think we need to eat all the time, all the time, all the time. And Dr. Palmer and Dr. Mike would both say that's not necessarily the case, because when we do intermittent fasting and you start off little, like when I took Dr. Mike's course, he said, instead of having breakfast at 6 a.m., could you think you could have breakfast at 8 a.m.? you know and instead of at 8 a.m., can you work yourself up? Let's not eat breakfast until 10 a.m. And that's how I started in January of 2024. I did 8 a.m., then 10 a.m., then 12 noon. I can still eat breakfast at 12 noon. That doesn't mean that I miss breakfast. I like eggs, right? And then 2 p.m. And so now, Casey, what I do, and this addresses your question, do I have these reservations like what could happen now that I'm off keto? Is that every week, because I've worked up to it, I did not jump off the top of the building and do this. I worked up to a 24-hour fast. So every Tuesday, I flex it if life says otherwise, but every Tuesday, more or less, I do a 24-hour fast. That promotes autophagy, which is the whole cellular cleaning that happens in the human body. It elongates the mitochondria. Everything, not even for people like me, for anyone, it helps us be healthier. And it also kicks my ketones. I even pricked my finger at the end of a 24-hour fast. And thank God I was in ketosis. I mean, it was so rewarding to see that truth. And when I'm in ketosis, what that means is that those brain cells on the right side of my brain that were insulin resistant to carbohydrate, those ketones are getting in there specifically through my fasted walks, pretty much multiple times every week. And especially on my fasting days, they're getting in there to nourish that mitochondria, to repair those cells, and to continue my health. And if that's the price I have to pay for the rest of my life, that is a price I want to pay.
Yeah. So well explained. Thank you so much for going into that detail. I think people hear, what I was asking about and think like, oh, she left keto. She doesn't do keto anymore. She's back to eating, cake, and she needs the goos and gel packs and the granola bars to fuel her running and that kind of thing. But when you think of keto, we're talking about is ketosis. There's many different ways to get into ketosis, and fasting is a great way to do it. Doing fasted exercise at a low level is a great way to do it. So it's cool that there are other tools that you use. And again, assuming that you maybe are not eating quote unquote the keto diet, you're probably not eating cakes and cookies and all that other stuff all the time. Your body would not
No.
be in that level of ketosis. You are afforded a lot more flexibility of eating some carbohydrates when you are doing what you're doing and you have metabolic flexibility and you're not experiencing any symptoms. Like, it's still probably going to be relatively low, and it's probably not going to be tons of sugar and ultra processed foods. But yeah, if you have some, you're going to be just fine. It's okay.
Yeah, and I do. I mean, I'm a regular human being. I love cake. I mean, I love the art of making a great cupcake, but that is certainly not my standard fare. I've stayed away from, by Denise's suggestion. I think it's an excellent. I make my own gluten-free bread. I don't really get into gluten too much. I mean, for me, that's kind of like alcohol. I mean, I do it in moderation, right? I mean, everything in moderation, and every body is different. My body doesn't do well with a lot of starchy stuff. So I know that about me.
Yeah, got it. Okay. And I wanted to ask specifically about your daughter, but I'm going to make this a little bit more broad and ask about all of the people,
Uh-huh.
maybe in your household that, whether they wanted to or not, have kind of joined you. You guys eat the same kind of foods. What other benefits have you noticed inside the household with other people that have kind of taken this journey with you?
I guess more whole foods. The idea of our family has gotten into raw milk. Um, Shredding your own cheese, so I'm not needlessly eating, the other anti-caking ingredients. Occasionally I know I never realized how many chemicals there were everywhere. We have a farm near us, and I try to buy, although it's a more pricey, occasionally I can make those decisions where I choose pasture raised beef and chicken and things like that. I if you check out yogurt, I mean, we could have a whole hour discussion on yogurt. Lots of yogurts have just as much sugar, added sugar, as sugar cereal. So I take a whole milk yogurt. Denise will say, and there's a nutritionist here locally that says, don't be afraid of dairy fat. It is a whole good fat for you. And I think that's one of the things that the Dr. Palmers of the world do is, and Denise does, and she's spoken this out. Dairy fat is a good kind of fat. And so I would say that I have made friends with healthier fats thanks to keto.
Yeah, got it. It's great to find some of those foods, and I think those are all great steps. And again, with the family doing more of the whole food thing, what kind of benefits have they noticed that you can kind of report on?
You don't need things as sweet as you think you do, right? And so, for example, my husband came up last week, and he is, he loves his processed junk food, and nothing was looking good to him. And I said, would you let me make you a snack? Because he works a lot from home. And I took some whole milk yogurt, put a little bit of honey in it, chopped up fresh fruit, um, did a crumble of baked oatmeal that I made, and he ate it all, and he goes, man, that was really good. I think if we're just willing to have our mind open to something different, and then you make friends with it, and you go, oh my word, that's better.
Huge step.
Um, yep.
That's a huge step. Yeah. When you think of what he could have grabbed, that's a really big step. So yeah, awesome. I absolutely love that. We talked about running, we talked about sports earlier, and yeah, I think a lot of people are not really exposed to it at an early age, or like you, like it's just you're more cerebral. It wasn't kind of a thing that was really pushed. Obviously very smart, went into teaching, and I was a little bit the opposite. I was brought up in a household where my dad covers sports here on TV. He has so for like 40 years here in the Salt Lake City Valley. He's worked for the same station. I've been exposed to a lot of sports teams, and I often say like I love sports. There's value in sports, and there's teamwork and competition and all those things, but there's also the thing of like you're doing hard things, you're accomplishing something. And tell us a little bit about how that message kind of shines through in your book, and the things you learned about the value of not just sports themselves and who wins a game and is your team the champion or not, but also like the metaphor of life that endurance sport is, and pushing through something. And tell us how that kind of shines through in your book.
Okay, I never realized this, but your thoughts matter. And when you choose what you think about, that kind of shapes your attitudes. And those attitudes go out before you and they ultimately impact your behavior. And running taught me that. And running taught me resilience. So I was running in South Carolina one time, and it was the year I had a coach. And I was running faster than he wanted me to run. And I only had a couple miles left. I mean, it was an amazing 10-mile race. I was having a good day when everything was clicking and the run was feeling great and I was running faster than, and then all of a sudden I had this thought, well, wonder if I got nauseated. Maybe I'm feeling nauseated. Maybe I shouldn't, maybe I should just sandbag the last couple of miles. I will be faster than he wanted me to run anyway. And then all these things started to tumble into my brain. And then I got angry and I said, stop. What are you doing? The direction of your thoughts in this race, and that is what running has done for me. The way we think impacts our attitude, which impacts our behavior. And that impacts, or that translates into mental health. People that feel so impoverished, like I'm not worth it or I don't matter. Those thoughts can become self-sabotaging. So let me get back to this race. I got angry. I thought, wait a minute, this is a good day. I'm running really fast. And I got so mad by the direction of my thoughts. I sped up. I sped up for the last 2 miles, and I finished that race faster than anyone thought I would finish. And I thought my own self-sabotaging behavior nearly killed the race that I could have had if I would have let that win the day. Now, translate that into what had happened with my daughter. She wrote a term paper, a research paper for her Spanish class. It was all in Spanish. The day before it was due, she decided that it didn't work. It didn't sound good. She almost deleted the whole paper. I took a deep physical dive across her lap and said, whoa, we're getting ice cream. This thing was amazing work. We're just going to celebrate that. And we're going to hand this in faith that you have done a good job, right? And she got an A on the paper, but it didn't matter, right? What we do in our brain between our two ears. Dr. Ryan Hall, the U.S. fastest American half marathoner, says the same thing. Our thoughts go before us and they lead us. And sports was a stage for me to understand the power of thought. So someone who's struggling with a mental health disorder, a lot of times, and I think this is how running ends up being very therapeutic, is that it helps with the metabolic health and the mitochondria and all. I get that. But what that helps with is your thinking. It matters what you think. Your thoughts matter. And running's been a huge gift in my life to say, you know what? You need to have authority over your thinking, because what you think, what goes on between your two ears, that's an important thing.
Yeah. Wow. I just got back from a trip that I did with my wife. I bit off way more than I could chew in this hiking adventure. We went down to Zion National Park. The
Oh,
first day we got down there, we did a hike that was 6 miles in and 6 miles back, but we started at like 10:30 in the morning. It's nearly the summer solstice around here. So
mm,
I had some level of heat, difficulties with the heat shock or whatever. By the time I was done, I was really dehydrated. I tried to stay up on my salt, my water, and by the end, it was really tough, very exposed, no shade. And like the next day, this hike you have to get a permit for. It's called the Subway, and it starts with scrambling down this really, really kind of sheer cliff, kind of all the way down. That's lots of boulders, and you look back and like if you lose
Oh,
you're on hands and feet. If you lose your footing, and it had just rained too, so it was kind of slick. And like if you fall, you're done. No choice in certain parts. And then this trail is completely unmarked. It's in the middle of the wilderness. You just have to follow a creek, but you're scrambling boulders, crossing the creek 20, 30 times, trying to find a trail, losing the trail the whole time. And I'm in the middle of this hike. I'm already sore from the hike we did before. My quads feel terrible, and I'm getting up to this boulder, and I'm thinking to myself, I can't do this. Thinking that we still have to keep going. Then I need to turn around. Then I need to go back up this steep hill. I'm I I'm at my limit. I feel like a fairly healthy dude, but I'm at my limit. I don't know that I can do this. And I almost quit. And I decided, let me just keep going a little bit more. And I had the thought come to me that like, hey, you're not there yet, but you're taking a step. And
that's right.
it was so powerful to me that not only did it get me to the end of the hike and all the way back, and I was fine. You get your second win, but also I made sure to put that in my phone because it's such a great metaphor for life. Like I am not where I want to be in life, but I'm taking a step. And your message is very similar to that. Like
Mhm.
when you get down on yourself, sport, endurance sport, whatever activity, whatever practice it is, your daughter and her project, like wherever you are, when you feel like quitting, you're not there yet. That's okay. But you can take another step. And I appreciate you indulging me and letting me tell that story. But I thought it was very much related to the message that you're sharing.
Absolutely. Exactly perfect. Yep.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing. So the book is coming out in January of
That's the goal
2026.
about
Okay,
that. Yeah. By
nice.
January, hopefully. I mean, we'll see, but by January.
Well, speaking of running a race, I've heard that writing a book is like the epitome of running a race. It
Editing is
feels like
so
so
hard.
much
Yes, yes.
work and takes forever. And you think like, oh, I'm just going to get this out there and a publisher's going to grab it. And in a few weeks, we'll have tons of copies. We'll just mail them out everywhere. But yeah, I've heard it's quite the race.
It is. It is.
Wow. Louise, can you even believe that we've been talking for an hour at this point?
Hmm. I can't. I mean, our hour just went so quickly. Thank you so much for this opportunity and allowing me to share.
Yeah, well, it was an honor to host you. And again, your passion and energy is absolutely wonderful. There's so many lessons in everything that you talk about and the things that you've written about in your book. I cannot wait to get my hands on it when the time comes. A little bummed out that I have to wait another 6 or 7 months, but I'm very much looking forward to that coming out. And yeah, I just really appreciate you and taking the time to come on our
Thank
show
you.
today to share your message. And just like if you find one parent that your book helps, if this episode touches one person, I think that would be a huge success and a wonderful use of our time. So, Louise, again, thank you so very much. So much appreciate
Thank you,
you and everything
Casey.
you've gone through and having the willingness to come on the show. And Denise recommended you very highly to be a guest on our show. For now, where would you like people to go to find you and connect with you and your work?
Well, I'm kind of a work in progress. I'm going to have my own landing page and access that on Facebook. So that is kind of in the works. I haven't really launched that yet, but that is soon and coming within the next few weeks. But I do have Facebook, and I am also going to be present on Instagram as well. But right now, kind of have my hands full with just editing my manuscript, but launching soon into all things marketing and being more visible. So,
Yeah, gotcha. Okay. Well, this episode will drop in a few weeks. And
okay,
so we've got a little bit of time. I'll tag your Facebook and then anything else that we have between now and then that you're able to create and get started, that long landing page, regardless if that gets done before or after this episode comes out, just let me know, reach out to me directly so I can add those. So anybody listening can go to the show notes and they can find your work
sure.
and yeah, get a pre-order of the book, which I know is also very important for authors. So we'll link all of that up when the time comes. But for now, Louise, thank you so very much
Thank
again
you,
for
Casey.
your amazing journey, for sharing so many great practical tips, and most importantly, really inspiring not only myself but the people that are watching, the people that are listening. So thank you so very much, Louise, for everything you do, and thank you for taking the time to be on our show today. We really appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you,
Uh,
Casey.
Absolutely. And this
Bye.
has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio.